I was sold to the alpha's worst enemy, but I made him fall in love with me. Chapter 1. The auction block was cold against my bare feet. I stood there in chains, wearing nothing but a thin white dress that showed everything, while hundreds of wolves stared at me like I was meat. And I was. That's what I'd become. What my own family had made me. My name is Luna. Just Luna. I don't have a last name anymore because last names are for people, and I wasn't a person anymore. I was property. A debt to be settled. 3 days ago, I'd been the daughter of Gamma Marcus of the Silver Creek Pack. Not high rank but respected. Safe. I'd had a small room in my parents' house, clothes that fit, food every day. I'd had dreams, stupid dreams about finding my true mate, about having a family, about being happy. Now I had nothing. Because my father had gambled. And lost. And lost. And kept losing until the pack's treasury was empty, and the alpha demanded payment. Started 2 years ago, though I didn't know it then. Small debts at first. My father borrowing against his Gamma salary to fund investments that never paid off. Then larger ones, desperate ones, as he tried to win back what he'd lost. The pack's money, meant for roads and healers and winter stores, slowly disappearing into the pockets of creditors who smelled blood in the water. My mother knew. I think she always knew. She'd find him late at night, hunched over account books, drinking the strong spirits that made his hands shake in the mornings. She'd say nothing, just bring him another cup, another bottle, another silence that enabled everything. I was 19 when I first noticed something wrong. The winter was harder than it should have been, food rationed, heating was scarce, the elderly suffering from cold they'd never known before. I asked my father about it, and he'd smiled his charming smile and told me not to worry. Told me pack business was complicated. Told me to focus on my training, my duties, my future. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. He was my father, the man who'd taught me to ride, to track, to stand up for myself. He was Gamma Marcus, respected and capable and strong. He wasn't any of those things. He was a liar and a coward and a man who would eventually sell his own daughter to save his skin. The final collapse came in spring. The Alpha Thorn, old and paranoid and cruel, discovered the missing funds. Not all of it, but enough. 50,000 gold gone. Spent on gambling debts and bad investments and the desperate hope that the next roll of dice would fix everything. My father could have confessed. Could have accepted exile or the challenge circle or whatever punishment Thorn decreed. Gamma was a high position but not irreplaceable. The pack would survive his fall. Instead, he offered me. She's young, he'd said, not looking at me while I stood in the corner of the Alpha's office, understanding slowly dawning like ice water in my veins. Healthy, pretty enough. The traders will pay good coin for her. I was 20 then, small for a she-wolf, with plain brown hair and plain brown eyes and nothing special about me at all. Except that I was breathing. Except that I had a working womb. Except that I was young enough to be trained, broken, reshaped into whatever a buyer wanted. The Alpha had looked me up and down, his pale eyes assessing. Thorn was ancient by wolf standards, nearly 60. His power maintained through cruelty rather than strength. He'd killed 3 challengers in the past decade. Not through skill but through poison and treachery. Everyone knew. No one said anything. Done, Thorn had said, his voice like gravel. Take her to the traders tonight. The debt is cleared when the coin is in my treasury. My mother had cried. Actually cried like that made up for anything. She'd hugged me and said she was sorry, so sorry, but what could they do? The pack came first. The family needed to survive. I needed to be brave, to be strong, to understand that sometimes sacrifices were necessary. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there and felt something inside me turn to stone. That stone was still there now, 3 days later, keeping me standing while the auctioneer called out my details to the crowd. Female wolf, 20 years, unmated, unmarked. Healthy, confirmed fertile, trained in domestic duties. Bidding starts at 50 gold. 50 gold. That was my value. Less than a good hunting dog. Less than a horse. Less than the debt my father had run up in a single night of cards in desperation. The bidding went fast. 60. 70. 80. Wolves shouted numbers and I stared at the wall behind them. Not seeing anything, not feeling anything. This was my life now. I'd be bought by some stranger, taken to his pack or his home, and used however he wanted. If I was lucky, he'd just want a housekeeper. If I wasn't lucky, 120. A voice from the left. I didn't turn to look. 150. Another voice, older, female. That was worse somehow. Women buyers were often brothel keepers, trainers for the pleasure houses that served wolves who couldn't find mates. 200. The first voice again. They argued back and forth, my price climbing slowly, and I wondered what they saw when they looked at me. Person? A tool? A collection of parts, womb, hands, mouth, that could be used and discarded? My mother had tried to prepare me. In the hours between my father's betrayal and the trader's arrival, she'd pulled me aside and whispered desperately about survival. About being compliant, being useful, being so valuable that my buyer wouldn't want to break me. About finding opportunities, earning trust, maybe eventually buying my own freedom if I served well enough. She'd given me a small knife, hidden in my dress. For emergencies, she'd said, not meeting my eyes. If it's too bad. If you can't bear it. I understood what she meant. The knife was for my wrists or my throat, or the heart of whoever tried to take what I wouldn't give. It was an escape hatch, a final choice when all other choices were gone. I'd hidden it well. The traders hadn't found it when they stripped and examined me, when they confirmed my health and fertility and marked me with their brand. A small burn on my shoulder that meant I was property, not person. The bidding reached 280. The voices were fewer now, serious buyers rather than casual cruelty. I could feel their eyes on me, assessing, calculating, deciding how much they were willing to invest in my future labor. 500 gold. The crowd went silent. 500 gold was absurd. That was alpha-level money, the kind of sum that bought warriors or land or serious political favors. No one spent that on a plain she-wolf with no special skills, no connections, no value beyond the generic. I turned my head, my first real movement since they chained me up, and looked for the voice. He stood at the back of the crowd, separate from everyone else, wearing a black cloak with the hood up. But even covered, I could tell he was big. Huge, actually. Taller than anyone around him, broad through the shoulders, radiating danger like heat from a fire. The crowd had unconsciously cleared space around him, leaving a circle of empty floor that marked him as other, as threat. The auctioneer looked nervous. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air. 500 gold from the gentleman in black. Do I hear 550? Silence. Absolute silence. No one was going to challenge that bid. No one was stupid enough to compete with someone who threw around that kind of money for a plain broken she-wolf. The auctioneer licked his lips. Going once. Going twice, sold. To the gentleman in black for 500 gold. The crowd began to disperse, whispering, glancing back at the mysterious buyer and his expensive purchase. I stayed frozen on the block while the auctioneer came over to unchain me, his hands shaking slightly. Congratulations, he muttered, not meeting my eyes. You've been bought by the Butcher of Blackstone. I didn't know what that meant. I found out later, when the whispers reached me, when the other servants spoke his name in hushed voices full of fear and awe and something like respect. The Butcher of Blackstone. The scarred alpha who'd killed his own pack. Who'd hunted rogues for 3 years, leaving a trail of bodies across 3 territories. Who lived alone in a stone fortress, surrounded by weapons and silence, speaking to no one, trusting no one, loving no one. I'd been bought by a monster. The worst monster in living memory, according to the stories. A wolf who'd gone mad with grief and become something barely human. The man in black approached as I rubbed my wrists, trying to get feeling back into my hands. Up close, he was even more intimidating. A wall of darkness and muscle that blocked out the sun. I could smell him now. Leather and pine and something darker underneath, something metallic that might be old blood. Walk, he said. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. Like speech was an unfamiliar exercise. My horse is outside. Don't try to run. You won't get far. I didn't try to run. Where would I go? I was wearing a dress that barely covered me, no shoes, no money, no pack. I was nothing. Less than nothing. A ghost in a body that no longer belonged to me. I followed him out of the auction house and into the bright afternoon. The trading town was busy. Merchants hawking goods, travelers passing through. The constant movement of a place that existed on the edges of packed territories, belonging to no one and therefore accessible to everyone. His horse was massive, a black war beast that looked like it could trample a small house. It watched me with intelligent eyes, nostrils flaring as it caught my scent. I was afraid of horses. Had been since childhood when one had thrown me and broken my arm. But I didn't show it. The stone inside me kept my face still, my movements controlled. He mounted easily, with the grace of someone who'd spent his life on horseback. Then he reached down and hauled me up in front of him like I weighed nothing. I grabbed the saddle horn because I didn't know what else to do. There was no lady's saddle, no polite seat, just the hard leather between his legs and the terrifying drop to the ground. Hold on, he said. His arm came around me impossibly strong and then we were moving. The horse surged forward, and I bit my lip to keep from crying out as we galloped through the streets, past staring faces, past the boundaries of the town and out into the wilderness beyond. The wind tore at my thin dress, cold despite the spring sun. I was shivering in minutes, my bare feet numb, my whole body clenched against the discomfort. But I didn't complain. I'd learned already that complaints got you punished. Silence was safer. Silence was survival. We rode for hours. The trading town gave way to forest, then foothills, then the beginning of real mountains. The sun moved across the sky, warming and then cooling as afternoon turned toward evening. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since yesterday, a crust of bread and water from the trader's cage. But I didn't ask for food. I didn't ask for anything. Finally, as the sky painted itself in bruised purples and reds, we slowed. I looked up, blinking against the wind, tears in my eyes, and saw a fortress carved into the side of a mountain. Blackstone. It was terrifying and magnificent at once. Black stone walls rising from the mountain itself, towers with archers silhouetted against the darkening sky. A massive gate that looked like it could withstand an army. Not a home, a stronghold. A place built for war, not comfort. For survival, not living. The gate opened as we approached. No one challenged him. No one even looked at him directly. Wolves in warriors' gear stepped aside, heads bowed, as he rode through the courtyard and stopped before the main keep. I counted quickly as we passed. 30 warriors, maybe 40. A small force for such a large fortress. Either he didn't need more or he couldn't attract more. Given his reputation, probably both. He dismounted, then reached up to help me down. I stumbled when my feet hit the ground. Hours on horseback had turned my legs to jelly, and the cold had stolen my coordination, but his hand on my arm kept me upright. His fingers were warm through my thin sleeve, rough with calluses strong as iron. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Yes." My voice came out steady, though I wasn't sure it was true. "Good. Follow me." The inside of the keep was just as intimidating as the outside. Stone walls, torches burning in iron brackets, weapons displayed everywhere, swords, axes, spears, things I didn't have names for. The air smelled of metal and oil and something else, something cold that might be loneliness. He led me up 3 flights of stairs, each one steep enough to make my aching legs protest. Down a long hallway lined with closed doors. Finally, he stopped at a door near the end and opened it, gesturing me inside. It was a bedroom. Not a cell, not a dungeon, a real bedroom with a bed and a fireplace and even a window. There were clothes folded on a chest, simple but clean. A bathtub sat near the fire, steam still rising from it. As if someone had prepared this space knowing I was coming. "Clean yourself," he said. "Rest. Food will be brought. Tomorrow we talk." He turned to leave, his black cloak swirling, and I found my voice again. The stone inside me cracked just slightly and words came out. "Wait." He stopped in the doorway, his back still to me. I could see the breadth of his shoulders, the tension in his posture, the way his hand rested near a knife at his belt. Ready for violence even now. Especially now. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you buy me? 500 gold? I'm not worth that. I'm not worth anything." He was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a wolf howled, distant and lonely. Then he pulled back his hood, and I saw his face for the first time. I almost screamed. I didn't, but I almost did. Scars. So many scars. They covered the left side of his face completely, thick, twisted tissue that pulled at his eye and mouth, that continued down his neck and disappeared under his collar. The scars were old, fully healed, but devastating in their extent. They transformed his face from human to something else. Something that spoke of pain and violence and survival at impossible cost. His right side was almost handsome, strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, gray eyes that looked ancient beyond his years. But the left side was destruction, ruin, pain made visible, made permanent, made part of him forever. He turned his head slightly, letting me see the full extent of it, letting me react, testing me maybe to see if I'd scream or faint or run. Many probably had. I didn't scream. I didn't look away. I just looked. At the damage. At the man underneath it. At the exhaustion in his eyes, the bitterness in the set of his mouth, the loneliness that radiated from him like cold from ice. "Now you know why they call me the Butcher," he said, and there was something bitter in his voice. Something tired. Something hopeless. "Sleep well, Luna. You're safe here. No one will touch you without my permission, including me." He left, closing the door behind him. I heard a key turn in the lock, not to keep me in, I realized, but to keep others out. To enforce the safety he'd promised. I stood there for a long time staring at the door. Safe, he'd said. I was safe. No one would touch me. Not even him. I'd been bought by a monster. A scarred, terrifying monster who spent 500 gold on a worthless she-wolf, and then told her she was safe. Who prepared a bedroom with a hot bath and clean clothes and a locked door for protection. Nothing made sense anymore. I walked to the bathtub on shaking legs and lowered myself into the hot water. The heat was shocking, painful, wonderful. I scrubbed days of dirt and fear from my skin, watching the water turn gray, then brown, then almost black. I found the small knife still hidden in my dress, considered it, then set it aside. Not yet. Not while there was still possibility. As the water cooled, I let myself cry for the first time since my father had betrayed me. Not loud sobs, quiet tears that mixed with the bathwater and disappeared. I cried for the girl I'd been, the family that had thrown me away, the future I'd lost. I cried for my mother, who'd loved me enough to give me a knife for suicide but not enough to stop my sale. I cried for my father, who I'd probably never see again, and didn't know if I wanted to. And then I stopped. Because crying wouldn't save me. Nothing would save me. But maybe I could save myself. The Butcher of Blackstone had bought me. Fine. I was his property now legally and completely. But he'd also said I was safe. He'd said no one would touch me without his permission, including him. That meant I had value to him beyond the obvious. That meant he wanted something from me that wasn't just my body, my labor, my womb. I didn't know what yet. But I would find out. And I would use it. I was Luna, daughter of nothing, bought by a monster, locked in a stone fortress in the middle of nowhere. And I was going to survive. Chapter 2. I woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of food. For a moment I was confused. Where was I? This wasn't my little room at my parents' house, with its familiar creaks and morning sounds. This wasn't the traitor's cage with its stench and fear. Then memory returned in a rush. The auction, the ride, the scars, the promise of safety. The door was still locked from the outside. But someone had come in while I slept. There was a tray on the small table near the window, bread, cheese, sliced meat, fruit, even a small pot of honey. Real food, plentiful and appealing. And clothes folded neatly on the chest. Simple wool pants, a linen shirt, a warm vest, thick socks, and boots that looked like they might actually fit. I ate like an animal, not caring about manners, not caring that the food was probably drugged or poisoned. If they wanted me dead, they'd have killed me yesterday. If they wanted me compliant, well, I've been compliant my whole life. Look where that got me. The bread was fresh, the cheese sharp and good. The meat seasoned with herbs I didn't recognize. Whoever had prepared this knew how to cook. That was interesting. That was information. The clothes fit well. Too well. Someone had known my sizes exactly, had measured me while I slept or asked the traders or simply knew how to estimate accurately. That was disturbing, but I pushed the thought aside. I dressed quickly, lacing the boots, and went to the window. I was high up, 4th floor, maybe 5th. Below me, the courtyard bustled with morning activity. Warriors training with swords and axes, servants carrying supplies, horses being groomed, a blacksmith's forge sending up sparks and smoke. Beyond the walls, mountains rose in every direction, their peaks still capped with snow even though it was late spring. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by wilderness and winter. Even if I escaped, where would I go? The key turned in the lock. I spun around, heart pounding, as the door opened. It wasn't the butcher. It was a woman, older, maybe 50, with gray hair and a practical braid and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She bustled in, carrying more clothes and a brush, moving with the comfortable authority of someone who knew her place and was secure in it. "Good morning, dear. I'm Marta. I run the household here." She set her burdens down and came to me, hands outstretched, examining me like a mother checking a child for fever. "Let me look at you. Oh, you're even smaller than I thought. We'll need to adjust those pants. And your hair. When was the last time you had a proper brushing?" I stood frozen while she approached, not knowing what to do with kindness. It had been. I couldn't remember. Before my father's debts, certainly. Before the fear and the hiding and the slow realization that my family was breaking apart. I can brush my own hair, I managed. "Nonsense. Sit. It'll go faster if I help." She guided me to a chair by the fire and began working on my tangled mess of brown hair with gentle, efficient strokes. Her fingers were strong but careful, finding and releasing knots without pulling. Poor thing. The traders don't care for their merchandise properly. Just throw them in cages, feed them enough to keep them alive, let them stew in their own fear. Well, that's over now. You're in Blackstone now, and we take care of our own. "I'm not your own," I said quietly. "I was bought. I'm property." Marta's hands paused for just a moment. Then she resumed brushing, her voice softer, more serious. "The master bought your contract, yes. That's the law. But that doesn't make you property here. Not the way you think. What does it make me, then?" There was a long silence. The brush moved through my hair, smoothing, untangling, transforming my wild mess into something neat and civilized. "That depends on you, dear. And on him. Blackstone is different from other places. The master is different. You'll see." "Different how?" Marta finished with my hair, braided it neatly down my back, and stepped back to examine her work. "There. Pretty as a picture. Now the master wants to see you. I'll take you to his study. Walk with confidence, keep your eyes down if he seems angry, and speak only when spoken to. That's my advice." "Is he often angry?" Marta's expression flickered. Sadness, maybe, or memory, or both. "He's often in pain. Those aren't the same thing, though they can look similar. The scars hurt him, especially in cold weather. And the memories hurt worse." She shook herself, returning to practical matters. "Come. Don't keep him waiting." The study was on the ground floor. A massive room lined with books and weapons in equal measure. Swords crossed above the fireplace. A spear mounted beside a painting of mountains. Axes and books sharing shelf space like natural companions. The butcher, Kael, I reminded myself his name was Kael, sat behind a desk made of dark wood, writing something with a quill. He didn't look up when we entered. Leave us, Marta. Yes, master. She squeezed my shoulder once, a gesture of support, then left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. I stood there waiting, trying not to shake. The room was warm from the fire, but I was cold. Always cold now, deep in my bones where the stone lived. Finally, he set down the quill and looked at me. His gray eyes were even more striking in daylight, pale as winter ice, with tiny flecks of darker gray that looked like storm clouds moving across frozen lakes. They were ancient eyes that had seen too much, but they were also intelligent. Watchful. Assessing. Sit, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I sat. The chair was comfortable, well-made, nothing like the rough furniture I'd expected in a fortress of war. Do you know who I am? You're called the Butcher of Blackstone. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I don't know your real name. Kael Blackstone. He leaned back, studying me with those terrible eyes. And do you know why they call me the Butcher? I shook my head, though I'd heard whispers, stories, legends told to frighten children. Because I killed my own pack. He said it flatly, like he was discussing the weather or crop yields. No emotion, no justification, just fact. 7 years ago. I was their alpha, young and arrogant and sure of my own invincibility. I led them into a trap. Rogues we'd been hunting who turned out to be hunting us. 200 wolves died because I made the wrong decision. Because I was stupid. He touched the scarred side of his face, unconsciously, fingers tracing the twisted tissue. I survived. Barely. The scars are from their claws and fire. The name is from what I did after. I didn't want to ask. I asked anyway because I needed to know what kind of monster had bought me. What did you do? I hunted them down. Every rogue involved in the ambush. I spent 3 years tracking them across territories, into the wilderness, into places wolves don't go. And I killed them all. Slowly. Painfully. I made them scream for mercy I never gave. His eyes met mine and I saw the darkness there. The abyss that lived behind his stare. The capacity for violence that had earned him his name. That's why they call me the Butcher. Because I am one. Because I enjoyed it. Because for 3 years killing was all I wanted to be. I should have been terrified. I was partly. But another part of me understood. Understood what it meant to be broken and still standing. To be marked by pain and keep moving forward. To become something terrible because the alternative was feeling the grief. Why did you buy me? I asked. The question that had haunted me since the auction block. Kael was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded paper. He slid it across the desk to me, his scarred hand moving with surprising grace. I opened it carefully. It was a drawing. A portrait skillfully done in charcoal and ink, of a young woman with brown hair and brown eyes and a small smile that suggested she knew something wonderful. She was pretty without being beautiful, warm without being simple, alive in a way that made my chest ache. She looked like me. Exactly like me. Same hair, same eyes, same small frame, same stubborn chin. Looking at her was like looking in a mirror that showed a happier version of myself. Her name was Elena, Kael said quietly. His voice had changed, become something almost gentle. She was my mate. My true mate, fated by the moon. Bonded in every way wolves can be bonded. She was everything. A healer, gentle but fierce, who challenged me when I was wrong and held me when I was broken. We found each other young, mated at 18, planned a future that never came. He stopped and I saw his hand shake slightly where it rested on the desk. She died in the ambush, protecting a pup that wasn't even hers. A stranger's child caught in the crossfire. She threw herself in front of claws meant for him. Saved his life. Lost hers. His voice cracked just slightly on the last word. She was the best of us. The best of me. And she's gone. I stared at the portrait, at this ghost who wore my face. At the woman who had inspired such love. Such grief, such destruction. I look like her. You are her. Or close enough that when I saw you on that block I thought. He stopped, shook his head. It doesn't matter what I thought. You're not her. I know that. The first moment you spoke I knew. Elena was gentle, trusting, open. You're harder. Angrier. More guarded. But I couldn't let them sell you like cattle. I couldn't watch another version of her be destroyed. Even if the original was already gone. So what am I now? A replacement? A memorial? Some way for you to pretend she's not dead. You're free, he said, and I blinked, not understanding. Your contract is destroyed. I bought it to tear it up. He reached into the drawer again, pulled out a sheaf of papers, and held them over the fire until they caught. We watched them burn together. My sale, my servitude, my legal status as property, turning to ash and smoke. You can leave today if you want. I'll give you money, supplies, and escort to the nearest town. You can start over somewhere far from here, where no one knows your face or your history. I stared at him, trying to process this. Freedom? After everything? After 500 gold and a 3-day ride and a fortress in the wilderness? Why? Why would you do that? Spend all that money and just let me go? Because Elena would have wanted me to. He looked at the portrait still in my hands, and his expression softened into grief. She believed in kindness, in second chances, in the possibility of redemption even for monsters like me. Buying people is wrong even when you mean to help them, even when you're desperate and broken and seeing ghosts. He looked away, out the window at the mountains that surrounded us. Because I'm tired, Luna. I'm tired of being the butcher. Tired of death and vengeance and the empty house where she should be. Maybe letting you go is the first decent thing I've done since she died. Maybe it's the start of becoming something else. Something better. I sat there holding the portrait of a dead woman who looked like me, offered freedom by a scarred killer who destroyed 200 of his own people, and then spent 3 years destroying others. It should have been an easy choice. Take the money. Run. Start over somewhere warm and safe and normal, where no one knew about the Butcher of Blackstone or the daughter who'd been sold by her father. But I thought of my father selling me without a second thought, not even looking at me while he negotiated my price. Of my mother crying useless tears while she let it happen, giving me a suicide knife instead of protection. Of the pack that had watched me be led away and done nothing, said nothing, challenged nothing. And I thought of Kael, alone in this fortress of stone and weapons, surrounded by people who feared him, mourning a woman he'd loved enough to destroy himself for, buying a stranger because she looked like his dead love, then offering to set her free because it was right. Can I ask you something? I said. He nodded, still looking out the window. Do you have a cook? Kael blinked, thrown completely by the question. He turned to face me, confusion evident even through the scars. A cook? Yes. Several. Why? Do they make good bread? Because that bread this morning was terrible. Dry as sand, no flavor, probably made with old flour. And the cheese was obviously stored wrong. It had that sharp taste that means it's starting to turn, not the rich nuttiness it should have. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What? I can cook, I said, the words coming faster now as the idea took shape, as possibility opened like a flower in my chest. I mean really cook. My mother taught me. She was the pack's best cook before she married my father, famous for her festivals and feasts. I can make bread that's soft inside and crusty outside, with holes that hold butter perfectly. I can preserve food so it lasts through winter without spoiling, using salt and smoke and the right techniques. I can stretch a small budget to feed a large group, making plain ingredients taste like more than they are. I'm good at it. I'm useful. Luna. Let me stay, I said, leaning forward, the portrait clutched in my hands. Not as a prisoner. Not as Elena's replacement. As your cook. Your housekeeper. Someone who makes this place feel less. I gestured around at the stone walls, the weapons, the darkness that seemed to live in every corner. Less like a tomb. Less like a monument to death. You want to stay? Here. With me. He sounded genuinely baffled, as if the possibility had never occurred to him. I want to be useful. I want to earn my keep. And I hesitated, then plunged ahead, speaking the truth I was only beginning to understand. And I think you need someone who isn't afraid of you, who doesn't look at you and see the butcher, who just sees Kael, a man who made terrible mistakes and is trying to find his way back. He flinched. Actually flinched like I'd struck him, his whole body jerking with the impact of my words. You don't know what you're offering. I'm not safe to be around. The things I've done, the person I was, the person I could become again. The things you've done bought my freedom, I interrupted. 500 gold, remember? That's a lot of terrible things. But here you are, offering to let me walk away with nothing in return, with more than I came with because you think it's right. That means something, Kael. That means you're not the monster you believe yourself to be. He was silent for a long moment, his scarred face working with emotions I couldn't read. Grief and hope and fear and something that might be the beginning of healing. 1 month, he said finally. You can stay for 1 month as my housekeeper, cook, whatever you want to call it. If you still want to be here after that, we'll discuss something more permanent. If you want to leave at any point, you can. No questions, no obligations. I'll even help you find a position elsewhere, if that's what you want. And if you want me to leave? Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe that I'd consider his needs too. That I'd give him the same escape I was claiming for myself. Then I'll tell you. Honestly. Directly. And you'll go with enough to start over properly, in a place of your choosing. Deal. I stood and extended my hand, the portrait still in my other hand. He looked at my hand for a moment, then reached out and shook it. His hand was massive, scarred across the knuckles, warm and rough and strong. The hand of a killer, yes, but also the hand that had just offered me freedom. Welcome to Blackstone, Luna, he said. I hope you don't regret this. I smiled for the first time in days. It felt strange on my face, almost painful, like muscles I've forgotten how to use. I hope so too. Chapter 3. The first week was awkward in ways I hadn't anticipated. I threw myself into work because work was familiar. Work was safe. Work was something I could control in a world where everything else had been taken from me. I took over the kitchens, much to the relief of the warriors who'd been suffering through the previous cook's competent but uninspired meals, and started learning the rhythms of Blackstone. It was a fortress, yes, but also a small community. 30 warriors, 10 servants, various tradespeople who came and went. They existed in a strange state of isolation, cut off from the wider world of pacts and politics, self-sufficient and suspicious of outsiders. And they were all terrified of Kael. I saw it in how they moved around him, heads down, voices low, never meeting his eyes. I saw it in how conversations died when he entered a room, how people found reasons to be elsewhere, how the air itself seemed to grow colder in his presence. He moved through his own home like a ghost, present but untouchable, seen but not acknowledged. It made me angry. I didn't know why exactly. He was the butcher. He'd earned their fear, their avoidance, their whispered comments behind his back. But watching him eat alone every night, sitting at the head of a long table with empty chairs on either side, I felt something twist in my chest. Something that recognized loneliness and hated it. On the 5th day I did something stupid. Something that could have gotten me hurt or killed or thrown out. I brought my own plate to dinner and sat down across from him. The dining hall went silent. 30 warriors, 10 servants, all staring at me like I'd grown a second head or sprouted wings. Kael looked up from his food, his scarred face unreadable, his gray eyes narrowing with something that might be surprise or threat assessment. "What are you doing?" "Eating dinner," I said, spreading my napkin in my lap with deliberate casualness. "The beef stew is good today." I added rosemary. It cuts the richness, adds a brightness that was missing. "I eat alone." "You were eating alone. Now you're eating with me." I took a bite, chewed, swallowed, all while meeting his gaze without flinching. "Unless you're going to throw me out? Order me back to the kitchen." We stared at each other across the table. I could feel the fear radiating from the other people in the room. Fear that he'd kill me for this insolence, that my blood would spray across their food, that the butcher would live up to his name in the most literal way possible. "Rosemary," Kael said finally. His voice was neutral, curious. "That's the herb that smells like pine?" "Yes. My mother grew it in our garden. She said it aids digestion and improves memory. Though I think she just liked the way it made the kitchen smell." He took another bite of stew, chewing thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving my face. "It's good. Different from what we usually have." "Thank you." We ate in silence. Not comfortable silence exactly, but not hostile either. Charged maybe. Experimental. Two people feeling out boundaries, testing what was possible between them. When we finished, he stood and left without another word. But he hadn't thrown me out. He hadn't ordered me away. He hadn't even raised his voice. The next night I sat across from him again. And the next. By the end of the week it had become a routine, unspoken, unexplained but real. We ate together. Sometimes we talked about food, or the weather, or the fortress's endless need for repairs. Sometimes we said nothing at all, just shared space in a way that seemed to matter to both of us. On the 8th night he asked about my family. I told him. Everything. The gambling that started small and grew monstrous, my mother's enabling silence, my own slow realization that something was deeply wrong. The final confrontation, my father's betrayal, my mother's useless tears, the sale that had transformed me from daughter to property in a single afternoon. I spoke without emotion, like I was reciting facts about someone else's life. Because if I felt it, if I let myself feel it, I'd break. I'd shatter into pieces that might never come back together. When I finished, Kael was silent for a long time. The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled against the stone walls. Then he said, "My father sold my sister. When I was 12. She was 15, pretty valuable in the way that society values young women. He owed money to a neighboring pack, and she was his payment. Traded for debt forgiveness and a supply of iron. What happened to her? I don't know." His voice was flat, but I heard the pain underneath. "I tried to find her after I became alpha, but the trail was cold. She might be dead. She might be alive somewhere, hating me for not saving her, for becoming powerful too late to help." He pushed his plate away, appetite apparently gone. "I became the butcher partly because of her. Because I couldn't save her, so I decided to punish the world instead. To make sure no one else could have what I'd lost." "Has it helped?" I asked quietly. "The punishing, the killing, the being terrifying so no one gets close enough to hurt you." Something cracked in his expression. Just for a moment, a flash of raw vulnerability before the mask slammed back down. "No," he said quietly. "It hasn't." "Then maybe try something else." "Like what?" His voice was bitter, self-mocking. "Therapy? Meditation? Flower arrangement. Like letting someone sit with you at dinner. I kept my voice gentle, non-threatening. Like talking about your sister instead of just avenging her. Like. I hesitated. Then plunged ahead with the truth I'd been observing. Like letting yourself be Kael sometimes, instead of always being the butcher. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against stone with a harsh sound. You don't understand what you're asking. What you're risking. I killed 200 of my own people, Luna. I enjoyed hunting rogues. I became a monster because it was easier than feeling grief, and you want me to just stop? To be normal? To pretend that blood doesn't stain everything I touch? Then explain it to me. I stood too, facing him across the table. Help me understand. But don't run away from this, from me. Just because I'm asking questions you don't want to answer. He was already walking away, his broad shoulders hunched, his scarred face turned away from the light. Tomorrow, he said, not turning around. We'll talk tomorrow. If you still want to. I will. I promised to his retreating back. I'll be here. Marta found me later, clearing the dishes with mechanical efficiency, my mind racing with what had happened. You're brave, child. Or foolish. Possibly both. Is he angry? He's unsettled. She helped me stack plates, her voice low enough not to carry. No one's spoken to him like that in years. Maybe ever. He doesn't know what to do with you, how to respond. You've shaken something he thought was solid. Should I stop? Apologize. Marta smiled, that crinkling smile that made her look young and mischievous. Oh heavens no. Keep going. Shake him more. The master has been frozen for too long. Someone needs to melt the ice, and you're the first person with both the courage and the opportunity to try. I kept going. I asked him questions. Simple ones at first, about his favorite foods, his childhood before the ambush, the books that lined his study walls. He answered in monosyllables, clearly uncomfortable, clearly unpracticed at casual conversation. But he didn't tell me to stop. Didn't order me away. Just responded slowly like a muscle remembering how to move after long disuse. I told him about myself. My dreams of travel, of seeing the ocean, of learning to paint landscapes and portraits. The silly things I'd wanted before reality crushed them. I talked about my mother's cooking lessons, my father's rare moments of kindness, the way the pack had felt like home until it didn't anymore. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, he started to respond in kind. On the 12th day, he told me about Elena. Really told me. Not just that she'd died, but who she'd been. A healer, gentle but fierce, who'd challenged him when he was wrong and held him when he was broken. They'd found each other young, made it at 18, built a life together that had been perfect until it ended. She made me better, he said, staring into the fire in his study. I was there to bring him tea, a new routine I'd established, and he'd asked me to stay to talk. When I lost her, the good parts of me died with her. All that's left is this. He gestured at his scars, at himself, at the fortress around us. Pain and vengeance and the inability to let anyone close enough to hurt me again. That's not true, I said quietly. You bought me. You freed me. You could have kept me as a replacement, treated me like a doll that happened to look like her, but you didn't. You offered me freedom, Kael. That's not what a monster does. It's what a guilty man does. What a man trying to buy redemption he doesn't deserve. Maybe. But it's also what a good man does. A man who still knows right from wrong, even if he thinks he's lost the ability to choose rightly. I set down my tea tray and moved closer, close enough to see the individual scars, the way they twisted his skin but couldn't completely hide the bone structure underneath. The face he would have had, handsome and strong, if fate had been kinder. Kael, you made terrible mistakes. You led your pack to destruction. You became something terrible to punish yourself and others. But you're still here. You're still trying. That has to mean something. He reached out slowly like he expected me to flinch away. His fingers brushed my cheek, rough and warm, and I felt my breath catch at the unexpected intimacy. You look so much like her. But you're not her. You're harder, angrier, more stubborn. Elena would have forgiven everyone. My father, the rogues, even herself for dying. You. His thumb traced my jawline, and I leaned into the touch without thinking. You'd fight. You'd refuse to forgive, refuse to forget, refuse to be diminished. It's terrifying and compelling, and I don't know what to do with you, Luna. I bought you because I couldn't bear to see her face destroyed. But now I don't want to let you go. And that's wrong. You're here because I paid for you, and wanting to keep you makes me no better than my father? I finished. You're nothing like him. He sold me to save himself. You bought me to save me. And now you're offering to let me go, even though you don't want to because you think it's the right thing. I turned my face into his palm, pressing my cheek against his scarred skin, feeling the warmth and roughness and humanity of him. That's the difference. He never once thought about what was right for me. You can't stop thinking about it. You're paralyzed by it. Luna. Let me stay, I said. Not because you bought me. Not because I look like her. Let me stay because I want to. Because I choose to. Because I think we might be able to help each other find our way back to who we were supposed to be. He made a sound, half laugh, half sob, entirely broken, and pulled me into his arms. He held me like I was precious, like I was fragile, like I was the most important thing in the world. And I held him back, feeling the tremors running through his massive frame, the wetness of tears against my hair, the sheer need radiating from him like heat. We stood like that for a long time. Two broken people finding something whole in each other's arms. Two ghosts haunting each other back to life. Chapter 4. The third week brought visitors and with them the world I'd been hiding from. I was in the kitchens experimenting with a new bread recipe when I heard the horns, 3 short blasts, the signal for approaching riders. By the time I wiped my flour-covered hands and reached the courtyard, Kael was already there, surrounded by his warriors, his face set in the cold mask I'd learned to hate. 3 riders waited at the gate. They wore the colors of the Silver Creek pack, my father's pack. My stomach dropped, and I had to force my feet to keep moving forward. Alpha Kael, the lead rider, called out. He was young, arrogant, with the look of someone who'd never known hardship or doubt. I am Derek, son of Alpha Marcus. I've come to discuss business. Kael's voice was ice, the butcher in full force. You trespass on my territory uninvited. State your purpose or leave. Those are your only options. Derek's smile was oily, practiced, the expression of someone who'd learned to charm before he'd learned to be genuine. Direct. I like that. Very well, I've come about the girl. Luna, daughter of Gamma Marcus. You bought her at auction 3 weeks ago. My blood ran cold. How did they know? I'd assumed my family would forget me, write me off as dead or lost. Why would they care now? What could I possibly matter to them? She's here, Kael said. What of it? Her father wants her back. Family business, you understand. He regrets his hasty decision. He's willing to compensate you for your trouble. Say 600 gold? A healthy profit for your generosity. 100 gold more than he'd paid. My father must be desperate. Or Derek was lying and this was something else entirely. Something worse. She's not for sale, Kael said. Derek's smile flickered, uncertainty showing through the polished surface. Everyone's for sale, Alpha. It's just a matter of price. 700. She's not property. Kael stepped forward, and I saw the butcher in him then. The cold killer, the man who'd hunted rogues for 3 years without mercy. She's a free woman staying here by choice. The transaction you reference was the destruction of her contract, not its transfer. She owes me nothing. I owe her nothing. She's here because she wants to be. And if she wanted to leave? If her family? Then she'd leave. Kael's voice didn't rise, but somehow it became more terrifying. With my blessing and my assistance. But she hasn't asked. So your offer is irrelevant. Your presence is unwelcome. And your continued existence on my territory is becoming irritating. Derek paled but held his ground. This is a mistake, Blackstone. The Silver Creek pack has allies. Powerful allies. You don't want to make an enemy of us over some worthless she-wolf. Worthless. Kael repeated, and his voice was terrifyingly soft. You call her worthless. Yet your Alpha sends his son to retrieve her. Pays more than her weight in gold. Risks war with Blackstone. He smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf showing teeth. I think Luna is far from worthless. I think she's valuable enough that your father is terrified of what she might know. What she might say. What she might become. Derek's face went rigid, his composure cracking. This isn't over. It is for today. Go. Tell your father that Luna stays where she chooses. And if he sends another envoy without invitation, I'll send them back in pieces. Small, unidentifiable pieces. The riders left, their horses kicking up dust in their haste. The gate closed with a solid thud, and I stepped out of the shadows, my hands still shaking from flour and fear. Kael turned, saw me, and his expression shifted instantly, from terrifying to concerned, from butcher to Kael. You heard. Yes. I walked to him, not caring who saw, and took his hand. It was warm and solid and real. Thank you. For refusing. For defending me. For being willing to fight for my right to choose. Always. He squeezed my fingers. But Luna, this means something. Your father wouldn't spend that much unless he was afraid. Of you or what you represent. We need to find out why. How? We're isolated here. No spies, no network. No way to know what's happening beyond these mountains. Kael smiled, and it was different from his other smiles. Sharp, knowing, almost predatory. We have resources. People who owe me favors. Information brokers who don't care about pack politics, only about payment. He looked at me questioning. I'll find out what's happening in Silver Creek. And then we decide what to do together. Together. He'd said together. I felt something warm bloom in my chest, something that had been frozen for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like. Okay. Together. The information came 3 days later, brought by a ragged man who looked like a beggar but moved like a warrior. He spoke to Kael in private for an hour, then Kael called me to his study. Your father has been challenged, he said without preamble. His gambling debts finally caught up with him. A rival pack, Red Fang, is backing a challenger for his gamma position. If your father loses, he'll be exiled. Or killed. Probably killed. Red Fang doesn't leave enemies alive. I should have felt something. Should have cared that my father, who'd sold me, was in danger. But all I felt was tired. Resigned. Why does he want me back then? I'm not valuable politically. I have no allies, no power, no special skills that would help him. You're not the target. I am. Kael paced to the window, his scarred face troubled. Red Fang has been trying to expand into this territory for years. Blackstone blocks their path west. My fortress controls the only pass through these mountains for 200 miles. If they can force a conflict between me and Silver Creek, weaken both packs, they can sweep in and take everything. Using me as the excuse. Yes. He turned to face me. Derek's offer was a trap. If I'd accepted, taken the money, they would have claimed I sold you into worse slavery, that I was a trafficker as well as a killer. If I refused, they paint me as a kidnapper, a thief, a threat that must be eliminated by united force. He shook his head, frustrated. Either way, war. And Red Fang wins by picking up the pieces. I sat down, suddenly exhausted by politics and manipulation, and the endless games wolves played with each other's lives. So what do? We can't fight Red Fang directly, they have thousands of warriors. We can't ignore them, they'll manufacture a conflict anyway. We can't run, we'd be hunted across the territories. We could run, Kael said quietly. Disappear. I have safe houses, hidden resources, contacts in places so remote no one would find us. We could leave this all behind, start somewhere new, just live. Without the politics, the threats, the constant need to be strong enough to survive. And let them win? Let them destroy everything you've built, everything Blackstone represents because of me? Because of a threat they manufactured. It's not because of you. It's because of me, my past, my enemies, my choices. You just be. He stopped, reconsidering. You'd be collateral damage. Another victim of my inability to be normal, to be safe, to be anything other than what I am. Then be what you are with me. I stood, moving to him, taking his scarred face in my hands. Kael, you survived the ambush. You survived the scars, the vengeance, the isolation. You survived becoming the butcher and found your way back to being Kael. You can survive this too. At what cost? How many more deaths? Marta, Tomas, whoever falls in the battle to come. Marta's alive, I said, confused. I meant, he stopped, shook his head. I meant hypothetically. The cost of fighting, of resisting. Someone always pays. Then let's make sure it's worth paying. I kissed him, soft and sure, pouring my belief into the touch. Let's find another way. A way that doesn't require us to become what they think we are. We held each other as the sun set. Two people who'd found each other in darkness, trying to find a path through the storm that was coming. Chapter 5. The idea came to me in the middle of the night, waking me from restless dreams. I found Kael in his study as I knew I would. He barely slept anymore, too wound up with planning and worry. He looked up when I entered, his gray eyes tired but alert. I have a plan, I said. It's insane. It might get us killed. But it might also work. Tell me. We invite them here. All of them. Silver Creek, the neutral packs, everyone. We throw open our doors and show them Blackstone isn't what they think. Show them you're not the butcher anymore. That you're a leader, a protector, someone worth allying with instead of fearing. I moved closer, excitement building as I spoke. Show them us. A man who bought a slave and freed her. A woman who chose to stay. Love instead of power. Choice instead of coercion. Red Fang thinks they can manipulate everyone with money and threats. Let's show them something money can't buy. Kael stared at me. You want to throw a party? While we're being threatened with war. While your father is trying to buy you back and Red Fang is maneuvering to destroy us. I want to change the story. I knelt beside him, taking his hands, forcing him to look at me. Red Fang is telling everyone you're a dangerous rogue who needs to be destroyed. Let's show them you're a viable ally. Someone they want on their side, not against them. Someone who can help them, protect them, build something better with them. It's insane, he said. But he was thinking I could see it. Calculating possibilities. Probably. It might work. It might. He pulled me close, resting his forehead against mine. If it doesn't, if they come here and see weakness, they'll destroy us. You and me and everyone in this fortress. Then we show them strength. The kind that doesn't need to threaten. I kissed him soft and sure. Trust me, Kael. Trust us. We've come this far together. Let's go further. I do trust you, he whispered. That's what terrifies me. Preparing for the gathering took 2 weeks of frantic work. I threw myself into it because it kept me from panicking. We were inviting our enemies into our home, betting everything on the hope that they could be reasoned with, that they could see past their prejudices and fears. It was madness. Beautiful, terrifying madness. I redesigned the Great Hall. Less weapons, more warmth. Tapestries instead of shields. Flowers grown in the fortress gardens instead of armor displays. I worked with Marta to plan a feast that would showcase Blackstone's self-sufficiency. Venison from our forests, fish from our streams, vegetables from our gardens, wine from our cellars, cheese from our goats. We need to show them you don't need them, I told Kael. That you're strong alone but generous enough to share. Independent enough to be an equal partner. Not a dependent supplicant. And if they see it as weakness, as resources to be taken by force, then your 30 warriors remind them why Blackstone has never fallen. Why the Butcher's name still inspires fear even as we offer friendship. I smiled at him. Strength and hospitality, Kael. The carrot and the stick. The wolf who can be gentle because everyone knows he can also be terrible. He pulled me into his arms, something he did often now. Casual touches that still made my heart race, still felt like miracles. Where did you learn to think like this? To plan, to strategize, to read people so clearly? Surviving my family. You learn to read moods, to anticipate needs, to make yourself useful and likable when your safety depends on others' goodwill. I rested my head against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. I know how to make people comfortable. How to make them feel important, heard, valued. It's what I had to do to survive. Now I get to use it for something real. Something chosen. Celine arrived 3 days before the gathering, unexpected and magnificent. She came with a dozen Shadowfang warriors and an offer of alliance that stunned us both. I've been watching you, she told us, her sharp eyes assessing everything. Both of you. The scarred killer who bought a slave and set her free. The soul daughter who chose to stay and build something. You're creating something dangerous, something Redfang won't understand. Dangerous how? I asked. Hope. She smiled, sharp and knowing. The idea that broken people can heal, that monsters can become men. That the old ways of power and dominance aren't the only ways. Redfang thinks in terms of armies and gold. You think in terms of hearts and minds. She extended her hand. Shadowfang allies with Blackstone. Not for territory or treasure. For the future you're trying to build. I took her hand, tears pricking my eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. War is still coming. But now you won't face it alone. The guests arrived on the autumn equinox, when the balance between light and dark seemed like an omen. 5 delegations, Silver Creek, led by a nervous Gamma Marcus and his smirking son Derek. 3 neutral packs seeking advantage, and Shadowfang, Celine's presence a silent promise of support. I greeted them at the gate, dressed in deep blue that matched Kael's colors, my hand resting lightly on his arm. We presented a united front, partners, equals in this together. The woman who'd been sold and the man who'd bought her freedom, standing together by choice. Welcome to Blackstone, Kael said, his voice carrying authority without cruelty. The butcher was present but controlled, a threat implicit rather than explicit. My home is yours for the next 3 days. Eat, drink, speak freely. We have much to discuss, and I believe we can find paths forward that benefit us all. The first day was tense. Accusations flew. Derek demanding my return. Marcus trying to negotiate without conceding. The neutrals probing for weakness they could exploit. Kael listened more than he spoke, his presence imposing but controlled. His responses measured and thoughtful. I watched him and felt pride. This was not the butcher who'd hunted rogues for 3 years. This was a leader, a strategist, a man who'd learned that strength could be protective rather than destructive. That night, I hosted the women separately. Wives, daughters, female advisors who'd been excluded from the main negotiations. I'd learned from my mother that real power often flowed through these unofficial channels. Through relationships and shared confidences over food and wine. You seem happy, Celine observed, watching me across the fire. Despite everything. Despite being sold, exiled, caught between packs and politics and threats of war. I am happy, I said simply. I found something worth building. Someone worth building with. That's more than I ever expected. More than I thought possible. Kael Blackstone. She smiled knowing. The butcher. The monster who killed his own pack. The man who saved me. Who's trying to save himself. Who's opening his home to his enemies because he believes, maybe foolishly, that peace is possible. That people can choose better than their fears. Celine was quiet for a moment, her sharp eyes seeing more than I was saying. Then, Redfang approached me. Offered alliance, resources, support for expansion. In exchange for helping destroy Blackstone, for eliminating this experiment you're conducting. My blood chilled. What did you say? I said I'd consider it. She met my eyes unflinching. I wanted to see what you were building here. Whether it was real. Or just a pretty story to cover old patterns of power? And I think it's real. She stood, brushing off her dress with decisive movements. I think you're creating something that could change everything if it survives. Red Fang won't understand what they're facing. They think they can crush you with force, not realizing that force is exactly what you're offering an alternative to. She extended her hand again, formally this time. Shadow Fang allies with Blackstone. Publicly, permanently, whatever comes. I took her hand, and we sealed an alliance that would reshape the political landscape. The second day brought breakthroughs. Marcus, seeing Shadow Fang's commitment and Kael's genuine transformation, softened his stance. The neutral pacts, sensing the shift in power and perception, began negotiating in earnest. By evening we had the framework of a defensive alliance. Pacts bound by mutual interest and shared values rather than fear of a common enemy. Derek was furious. I found him in the courtyard, drinking alone. His handsome face twisted with resentment and thwarted ambition. You think you've won? He spat as I approached. Think you're special. The slave who became a queen. I think I'm lucky, I said quietly, refusing to let him bait me. Lucky to have been bought by the right person. Lucky to have found love in a terrible situation. Lucky to have choices I never expected. Love. He laughed, ugly and harsh. You think he loves you? He loves a ghost. You look like his dead mate. That's all you are to him, a replacement. A consolation prize. When he realizes you can't be her, that you're just a plain, ordinary woman with nothing special about you, he'll discard you like trash. I'd known this. Suspected it in my darkest moments. But hearing it spoken so cruelly still hurt, still found the cracks in my confidence. Even if that were true, I said, keeping my voice steady through sheer willpower, it wouldn't matter. Because I know who I am. I know what I've built here. And I know that Kael sees me, really sees me, every day when he wakes up and chooses me again. Not her. Me. With all my flaws and fears and stubbornness. Sentimental rubbish. He'll destroy you. It's what he does. Maybe. But that's my choice to make. My risk to take. My life to live. I stepped closer, letting him see my certainty, my peace. You want to know why we're winning? Because we're fighting for something. You're just fighting against us. And that's never enough, Derek. You have to stand for something, not just against something. He stared at me, something like respect warring with his anger. You should have been mine. My father offered for you years ago. Your father refused, said you were destined for better. And now look at you. Made it to a scarred killer in a stone fortress. Playing at politics you don't understand. I am exactly where I'm meant to be. Exactly where I chose to be. That's the difference between us, Derek. You think power is something you're given, something you inherit. I know power is something you build. Something you choose. Something you fight for every single day. I left him there, his poison unspent, and found Kael in the great hall. He was alone, staring at the fire, and I knew without asking that he was thinking of Elena. She would have liked you, he said without turning as I approached. Elena. She would have said I needed someone who challenges me, who doesn't let me hide behind my scars and my reputation. Do you still think about her? When you look at me. Every day. He turned, his scarred face open and honest. But not the way you think. I think about how she taught me to love. How she showed me what was possible between two people. And I think about how you're teaching me to live again. To hope again. To believe that the future can be better than the past. He took my hands. You don't replace her, Luna. You continue her work. Her legacy. The belief that people can be better than their worst moments, including me. I kissed him then in the firelight, surrounded by enemies and allies and the fragile possibility of peace. I kissed him for the past we couldn't change and the future we were trying to build choice by choice, day by day. Chapter 6. The third day shattered everything. We were so close. The treaties were drafted, the alliances formed. Marcus had agreed to recognize my freedom publicly, severing Red Fang's pretext for war. Shadow Fang's support had convinced the neutrals that Blackstone was a viable partner, not a dangerous threat. We were going to survive. We were going to win. And then Marta was found dead. I discovered her in the kitchens early morning, when I went to check on the bread rising. She lay on the stone floor, eyes open and staring at nothing. A single knife wound in her back that had killed her quickly, efficiently. The bread she'd been preparing was scattered around her. White flour mixed with her red blood in a terrible parody of recipe. I screamed. I don't remember screaming, but they told me later that I did. That Kael heard me from the other side of the fortress and ran faster than he'd ever run, certain I was dying, that he'd lost me too. He held me while I shook, while warriors secured the area. While we tried to understand what had happened. Marta, kind Marta, who'd welcomed me, encouraged me, been part of Blackstone since before Kael was born, who'd been a mother to him when his own family failed, who'd stayed when others fled, who'd believed in the possibility of his redemption when no one else did. Inside job, Kael said grimly. examining the wound with professional assessment. She knew her killer. Let them get close, turn their back, never saw it coming. But who? Why? To stop the alliance. To destroy what we're building. He stood, his face terrible in its grief and rage. Someone here is working for Redfang. Someone we trusted. The accusation tore through the gathering like wildfire. Accusations flew. Derek claiming Kael had killed her to frame Silver Creek. Marcus demanding to leave immediately. The neutral packs retreating to their rooms in fear. I sat with Marta's body, holding her cold hand, and tried to think. She'd been making bread. Early morning bread before anyone else was awake. She'd let someone into the kitchen, someone she trusted. Someone who'd betrayed that trust with steel and silence. Who would Marta trust? Who had access, opportunity, reason to want her dead, want us destroyed. And then I knew. I found him in the stables preparing to flee. Tomas, one of Kael's oldest warriors. Someone who'd been with him since before the ambush, before the scars, before the butcher was born. Someone who'd survived the massacre, helped with the vengeance, stayed through the isolation. Tomas, I said, seeing him. His hand went to his sword and I knew I was right. You shouldn't be here, Luna. His voice was different, harder, colder. Nothing like the gruff kindness he'd shown me before. You should be with the others, crying over Marta's body, blaming Silver Creek. You killed her. You killed Marta. His face twisted, guilt and defensiveness warring. She recognized me. Saw me coming out of the guest quarters where I shouldn't have been, talking to people I shouldn't know. She was going to tell Kael and I couldn't let. He stopped, realizing he'd confessed. Why? You've been with him for 15 years. You survived the ambush. You helped him hunt the rogues. You stayed when everyone else left. Why betray him now? Because he's weak. Tomas spat, all his resentment pouring out. Look at him, softened by a pretty face. Opening our doors to enemies, talking about peace and alliances and a better future. The Kael I followed was strong, ruthless. He would never have let Silver Creek's wolves breathe the same air as us, never have negotiated with people who should be kneeling. He was destroying himself, I said quietly. You saw it. The drinking, the isolation, the endless vengeance that was eating him alive. I didn't soften him, Tomas. I saved him from becoming what you apparently wanted him to be. A monster who destroys everything he touches, including himself. He's meant to be a weapon, not a politician. Not a lover. Tomas raised his sword, pointing it at me. And you're the cause of it all. If you die, he goes back to what he was. Strong. Terrible. Alone. The butcher I pledged my life to. He lunged. I was ready. Kael had been teaching me to fight, little lessons stolen between negotiations and planning, and I'd been practicing on my own. I dodged, grabbed a pitchfork from the wall, and held him off with desperate strength until the others arrived. Kael killed him. One blow, clean and terrible. The butcher emerging for just a moment before he turned to me, checking for wounds, holding me like I was the only thing in the world. But the damage was done. The gathering dissolved. Marcus left, taking his wounded pride in his uncertain alliance. The neutrals followed, muttering about unsafe houses and murdered servants. Only Shadowfang remained, Celine's sharp eyes watching everything, calculating our chances of survival. We can rebuild, I told Kael that night in our room. We can find another way. There's no other way. He sat by the window staring at the mountains. Redfang will attack now. They know we're isolated, weakened by betrayal. They'll come with everything and we can't stop them. Then we fight. With what? 30 warriors against thousands? With an ally who might be the next to betray us. With what we have. With who we are. I knelt before him, forcing him to look at me. Kael, you survived the ambush. You survived the scars, the vengeance, the isolation. You survived becoming the butcher and found your way back. You can survive this. At what cost? How many more deaths? Marta, Tomas, however many fall in the battle to come. However many are saved by what we built. I took his hands, pressing them to my heart. Marta died protecting our dream. Tomas betrayed us because he feared that dream. They both believed in its power even if they chose different sides. We can't let that power die. He was silent for a long moment. Then, I would burn the world for you, Luna. I would become the butcher again, become everything I hate, to keep you safe. I know. That's why I love you. But that's not what I want. I kissed his scarred knuckles. I want you to be Kael. The man who bought a slave and set her free. The man who opened his doors to his enemies because he believed in something better. The man who chose love over vengeance, hope over despair. That man might not be strong enough to win. Then we find another way to win. Together. Celine found us there, still holding each other, still searching for answers in each other's eyes. I have a proposal, she said. A way to survive this. But you won't like it. Tell us. Redfang's alpha Varek is old. Cruel, powerful but old. He has no heir. Killed his own son in a fit of rage 5 years ago. The pack follows him out of fear, not loyalty. She smiled sharp and knowing. Challenge him. Single combat. Alpha to whoever Blackstone names as champion. You want me to fight their entire army with one duel? Kael asked. I want you to cut off the head. Kill Varek. Claim his pack by right of conquest, and suddenly you're not defending against thousands, you're leading them. Celine shrugged. It's how I built Shadowfang. One challenge at a time, gathering the outcasts and the broken until we were strong enough to demand respect. And if I lose? Then you die. Luna dies. Blackstone falls. Celine was brutally honest. But you'll die anyway if you fight conventionally. At least this way you choose the battlefield. You choose the terms. You choose to fight for something instead of just against destruction. I felt Kael's tension, his fear. Not for himself but for me. For what would happen to me if he fell. I'll do it, I said. Both turned to stare at me. What? I'll be the champion. I stood, my voice steady despite my terror. Varek won't expect a woman. He'll underestimate me, laugh at the challenge, maybe even accept terms that favor us because he thinks it's a joke. He won't know how to fight someone like me. Luna, no. Yes. I faced Kael, my love, my heart. You taught me to fight. I've been training every day, learning everything you know. I'm not as strong as you, not as experienced, but I have something you don't. I touched his scarred face gently. I have nothing to lose. No reputation, no legacy, no years of being the butcher that Varek can study and counter. I'm just Luna. A soul daughter, a freed slave, a woman in love. He won't know what to do with me. You'll die, Kael whispered, anguished. Maybe. But if you go, you definitely die. Varek is old, but he's fought 100 duels. He knows every trick, every trap. He'll destroy you because he knows exactly what you are. I smiled, trying for brave. He has no idea what I am. Chapter 7. The ride to Redfang territory took 2 days through mountain passes and hidden trails that Celine knew from her own years of building Shadowfang. We traveled light, Kael and I and a small escort of trusted warriors, leaving Blackstone in Marta's sister's capable hands. I spent the journey preparing mentally, reviewing everything Kael had taught me about Varek. His fighting style, brutal, direct, relying on strength and intimidation. His weaknesses, arrogance, predictability, a tendency to toy with opponents before killing them. His strengths, decades of experience, massive size, absolute ruthlessness. He's killed everyone who's challenged him for 30 years, Kael told me on the first night, as we camped in a sheltered hollow. Champions from a dozen packs, all confident, all skilled, all dead. Then he'll be overconfident with me. He won't prepare properly, won't take me seriously until it's too late. Or he'll kill you instantly, efficiently to make a point. Then you avenge me. I met his eyes, letting him see my acceptance of risk, my peace with possibility. But I don't think it will go that way. I think I can win. He held me that night as if I might disappear, as if holding tight enough could keep me safe. I let him, drawing strength from his need, giving him what comfort I could. On the second day we reached the traditional challenge ground. A flat meadow below Redfang's mountain fortress, marked by an ancient stone that had witnessed 1,000 duels. Kael carved our demand into a wooden tablet, tied it to an arrow, and shot it up to the fortress gates with a warrior's precision. Then we waited. They came at sunset. Not Varek, he was too important for that. But his beta, a massive wolf named Grom with scars almost as terrible as Kael's. Blackstone challenges? Grom laughed, reading the tablet. A duel? For what? For everything, Kael said. Your alpha's life against our champions. Winner takes both packs. Grom's amusement faded as he understood we were serious. He'll want to fight you. The famous butcher. The scarred killer. Not me. Kael gestured to me. Her. Silence. Then Grom laughed, loud and genuine, the sound echoing off the mountain walls. Oh, that's beautiful. That's perfect. Varek will love this. He wiped his eyes. Fine. The challenge is accepted. 3 days hence at noon on this ground. Your champion. He pointed at me, incredulous. Against our alpha. To the death. Winner takes all. He left, still chuckling, and I felt my first real fear. Not of dying, I'd accepted that. But of failing. Of leaving Kael alone to face what came after. Second thoughts? He asked quietly. Third and fourth ones too. I leaned against him, drawing strength from his presence. But I'm still doing it. I know. He kissed my hair. That's what terrifies me. The 3 days were the longest of my life. Kael trained me from dawn to dusk, showing me everything he knew about Varek's style, his tells, his weaknesses. He's arrogant, Kael said, as we sparred in a forest clearing. He'll expect you to beg, to cry, to plead for mercy. When you don't, when you fight instead, he'll be surprised. That's your window. That's your only advantage. For how long? Long enough. Maybe. He caught my wrist, stopping my attack. Luna, if it goes wrong. I know. Finish it quickly. Don't let him torture me. Don't let him use me against you. Never. His eyes were fierce, desperate. I'll burn the world first. On the second night, we made love for the first time. Not the desperate coupling of people who might die, but something slow and tender and full of promise. We touched like we had forever. Like the morning would come and we'd still be together. Still building, still choosing each other. I choose you, Kael whispered against my skin. Not because you look like her. Not because you were convenient or available or grateful. I choose you because you're brave and stubborn and kind in ways I forgot existed. Because you see me, all of me, even the parts one hate, and stay anyway. Because you make me want to be worthy of you. I choose you, I answered. Because you let me go and asked me to stay. Because you became better instead of bitter. Because you love me enough to let me fight. Even when it terrifies you. After, we lay together under the stars and I memorized his face. The scars and the strength, the fear and the hope, the love that had grown between us against all probability. Noon came too soon. The flat ground below Red Fong's fortress was packed with wolves. Thousands of them, watching from the slopes, from the walls, from every vantage point. This was entertainment for them. A joke. The little she-wolf who thought she could challenge their invincible alpha. Varric was everything I'd feared. Massive, even larger than Kael, with a face like carved granite and eyes that held no warmth. No humanity, no mercy. He'd killed his way to power decades ago, and he'd held it through terror ever since. You're the challenger? He asked, his voice carrying across the silent field. This pretty thing? This slave that Blackstone's monster bought and bedded? I am. My voice was steady. Thank the moon, my voice was steady. And Blackstone's alpha lets his woman fight for him? How progressive. What happens when I kill you, little girl? Does he fight next? Or does he crawl away and accept my mercy? You'll have to kill me first, I said. And I'm harder to kill than I look. Varric smiled, showing too many teeth. I hope so. This would be disappointing otherwise. We shifted. I was small in my wolf form, brown and unremarkable, fast but not powerful. Varric was a monster, red-furred and scarred. Twice my size with muscles that spoke of decades of killing. He charged immediately, no warning, trying to end it in one blow. I dodged. Barely. His teeth snapped shut on air where my throat had been. He was fast for his size. Faster than I'd expected. He came at me again and I ran, dodged, twisted, using my smaller size to stay just out of reach, to make him work for every near miss. The crowd booed. They wanted blood, wanted me to stand and die like a proper victim, wanted entertainment rather than a chase. Varric grew frustrated. Fight, he snarled. Stop running and fight. I didn't answer. I was watching, learning, waiting. He favored his left side, old injury maybe. He telegraphed his lunges with a slight shift of weight. He was strong, yes, but predictable. And he was getting tired. I let him get close. Let him think he had me. When he lunged for my neck, I dropped and rolled, coming up inside his guard and bit. Not his throat, too well protected. His foreleg where the muscle met the joint. I bit deep, felt the tendon snap, and released before he could retaliate. Varric screamed. Actually screamed, high and surprised, and stumbled back. His left foreleg hung useless, bleeding, destroyed. The crowd went silent. I circled him now, the hunter instead of the hunted. He was still dangerous, one good bite could still kill me, but he was slowed, weakened, vulnerable in ways he hadn't been before. Yield, I said, my mental voice carrying to everyone watching. Yield and live. Step down, accept defeat, and keep your life. Never. He lunged again, awkward on three legs, and I dodged easily. You're beaten, Varric. Everyone sees it. Yield with dignity or die in shame. He attacked again and again, each time slower, more desperate. I avoided him easily, letting him exhaust himself, letting the crowd see their invincible alpha reduced to a bleeding, panting wreck. Finally he collapsed. Couldn't stand, couldn't fight. Lay there in the dirt, glaring hatred at me, waiting for the killing blow. Kill me then, he spat. Get it over with. I shifted back to human form, stood over him naked and unafraid. No, I told you can yield. Accept defeat, step down and live. Your pack doesn't need another martyr. They need an example of how to lose with grace. How to choose life over pride. You'd shame me? Let me live as the wolf who lost to a girl. I'd let you live as someone who chose peace over death. Who showed his pack that survival matters more than pride. That change is possible. That the old ways of killing aren't the only ways. I knelt beside him, speaking low enough that only he could hear. I've been where you are. Broken, defeated, with nothing left. I chose to build something new. You can too. He stared at me, disbelief warring with something else. Something that looked almost like hope. Yield, I said again. Please. Varric closed his eyes. And then so quiet I almost missed it. I yield. The crowd exploded. Confusion, anger, relief. I couldn't track it all. I just stood there shaking as Kael ran to me, wrapped me in his arms, held me like he'd never let go. You did it, he whispered. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected. Together. Chapter 8. Taking control of Red Fang was easier than I'd expected and harder than I'd hoped. Varek's surrender shocked everyone. No one had ever seen him beaten, let alone accept defeat. It created a power vacuum that Kael and I moved quickly to fill. But nature abhors a vacuum, and many wolves rushed to fill it with their own ambitions. We didn't execute Varek. That was my condition, my price for fighting. Instead, we exiled him with enough resources to survive, to start over somewhere far away. He left without looking back, his red fur dull in the morning light, and I wondered if he'd find what I'd found. If he'd learned to build instead of destroy. The packs merged, Blackstone and Red Fang, soon joined by Shadow Fang and the neutrals who'd been impressed by our victory. It wasn't simple. Old enemies don't become friends overnight. There were fights, betrayals, nights when I wondered if we'd bitten off more than we could chew. If our dream of a better way was just that. A dream, unrealistic and unsustainable. But we kept going. Kael led with strength and fairness, punishing cruelty, rewarding loyalty, showing by example that power didn't require terror. I worked beside him, focusing on the practical needs, food, shelter, the countless details of keeping thousands of wolves fed and housed and hopeful. We made mistakes, learned from them, grew stronger, wiser, more resilient. 6 months after the duel, we held a new kind of gathering. Not for treaties or alliances, but for celebration. The Midsummer Festival, shared across all our territories, wolves from a dozen packs mingling without fear. I walked through the crowds with Kael, greeting people I now called friends. Celine, whose sharp eyes had softened with something like pride. Marcus, my father, who'd finally apologized for selling me. Apology accepted but not forgotten. Trust given slowly and earned gradually. Mira, a she-wolf from Silver Creek who'd become my closest friend. Her own scars from a bad mating slowly healing. Alpha Luna! Children called, and I turned to see pups running toward me, laughing, fearless, the next generation who would grow up knowing only the world we were building. They'd started calling me that. Alpha Luna. Not because I demanded it but because I'd earned it. The she-wolf who defeated Varek. Who'd built something new from the wreckage of the old. I love you, Kael whispered that night, as we watched the festival lights. My Luna. My light. My impossible, wonderful choice. I love you, I answered. My Kael. My strength. My heart. Chapter 9. 5 years later. Again, Mama. Higher. I laughed, swinging my daughter up toward the ceiling of our bedroom. Lyra, named for the constellation that had shone on the night of her birth, squealed with delight, her small hands reaching for the rafters. That's high enough for one day, little wolf. Kael appeared in the doorway, his scarred face soft with love as he watched us. Your mother has pack business to attend to. Pack business is boring, Lyra declared, but she let me lower her, running to her father for a hug. Tell me a story instead. About when you were scary. I was never scary, Kael said, lifting her easily. You were the butcher. That's the scariest. That was a long time ago. Before I met your mother. He settled onto the window seat, Lyra in his lap, and caught my eye. Before I learned that being strong doesn't mean being frightening. That being powerful means protecting people, not controlling them. I joined them, our family framed in morning light, and felt the familiar warmth of gratitude. For this life. For this love. For the impossible journey that had brought us here. We built so much in 5 years. The Moonlight Coalition, our alliance of packs, stretched across territories that had once been war-torn and fearful. We'd established laws protecting the weak, schools teaching new ways, trade routes that brought prosperity instead of conflict. We'd shown that wolves could choose better than their fears, could build instead of destroy, could love instead of dominate. Kael led with wisdom I'd never expected from the scarred killer I'd first met. I'd become something too, alpha in truth, respected for my own achievements rather than my connection to him. And at the center of it all, our family. Lyra, fierce and kind, already showing signs of being a leader herself. The new baby growing inside me, due in spring. The love between Kael and I, deeper every year. Tested by challenges and strengthened by overcoming them. Mama, tell the story, Lyra demanded. The real one. How you met Papa. You know it by heart. Tell it anyway. We told it together now, our voices weaving the narrative like a tapestry we'd practiced 1,000 times. Once I was sold, I began. And I was lost, Kael continued. Betrayed by family. Destroyed by grief. Then I was bought by a monster. Who turned out to be a man. Who set me free. Who asked me to stay. And I chose to. And she chose me. Together, we finished, and Lyra clapped her hands, delighted by the familiar ending. And they lived happily ever after, she added. Not always happily, I corrected gently. There were hard times. Sad times. Times when we didn't know if we'd survive. But always together. Always choosing each other. That's what made it real. That's better than happy, Lyra decided. Choosing is better. Yes, Kael agreed, kissing her forehead. It is. Later, after Lyra was settled and we walked the fortress walls together, Kael took my hand. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Staying, I mean. You could have left that first day. Started somewhere safe, normal, without all this responsibility and danger. Never. I squeezed his fingers, feeling the rough scars that matched his face. Every moment of difficulty is worth it. Because I'm with you. Because we're building something that matters. Because I chose this and I choose it still every single day. We are building something, aren't we? He looked out at our territory, at the smoke rising from peaceful villages, at the roads busy with trade instead of war. Elena would be proud. Of what we've become. Of what you're doing. I know. I'd made peace with his first love. With the ghost who'd brought us together. She was part of our story, not its end. She's part of this too. Part of why you could love me. Part of why you knew how to be gentle, when you finally let yourself try. Kael pulled me close, his arms strong and safe around me. I love you, Luna. My light, my choice, my impossible, wonderful wife. I love you, Kael. My monster, my man, my heart. We kissed as the sun rose higher. Two people who'd found each other in darkness and built a light that would outlast us both. Below, our pack thrived. Our daughter laughed. Our future stretched before us, full of possibility and promise and the continuing choice to build, to protect, to love. Once, I'd been sold to the Alpha's worst enemy. Now I was the Alpha's partner, his equal, his love. The mother of his children, the co-builder of his dreams, the woman who'd chosen him as he'd chosen her. And that, I thought, was the greatest victory of all. Not the duel, not the political triumphs, not the power we'd accumulated. The victory of choice. Of love freely given and freely received. Of two broken people who'd made each other whole. Dan. Hey there, amazing listeners. What did you think of Luna and Kael's epic journey? Did you love how she turned being sold into finding her power? How she chose love over fear? Building over destruction? Drop a comment with your favorite moment. Was it the first dinner together? The duel against Varek? The family scene at the end? I want to hear what touched your heart. And if you loved this story, smash that subscribe button because I have so many more tales coming. Stories of underdogs who become unstoppable. Of love that heals the deepest wounds. Of women who refuse to be victims and men who learn that true strength means protection, not cruelty. Remember, no matter how dark your beginning, you can write your own ending. You are never as powerless as you think. And love, real, chosen, built together love, is always worth fighting for. See you in the next story, beautiful people. Until then, stay strong, stay hopeful, and never let anyone tell you that you're not enough. You are more than enough. You are everything. Love you all.